Hey guys, this is Garret Price from Dynasty Nerds, and I'm here with 5 things that you need to do this offseason to prepare your Dynasty teams for 2021. First thing you need to do, get suggested rule changes out now to your leagues. The longer you wait, the more likely it is people will pass them. They need time to think about it. And as it gets closer to the start of the regular season, the more that they'll see that the rule positively or negatively impacts their team. The sooner you get it out, the more likely it is to pass, gives people more time to think about it. So ideally, if you can put in your group messages now, or if it's ones you meet with, maybe propose it at the Super Bowl, but try to get those out early so that way you can get those new rules passed for 2021. 2, evaluate your rosters. This is the perfect time to go in and look at each and every one of your teams. Now, I know most of you guys out there are only in a league or maybe up to 3 or 4 leagues. If that's the case, make sure you're digging into your lineups, looking at where you're strong at, where you're weak at. If you don't know how to do some of that, dynastynerds.com, the Dynasty GM tool, is the perfect resource to help you kind of evaluate where you're strong, where you're weak, and where the rest of the league sits at. But you need to dig into each one of your teams and see, okay, I'm strong at running back, but I'm kind of weak at receiver, or I've got some really good quarterbacks, but I don't know about my tight ends. You need to know that going into the season because that drastically affects some of the draft things, especially if you already know about the strengths and weaknesses of this class. So make sure you're getting in and evaluating your rosters today. And honestly, side note, if you're like me and you have 15, 16, 17 leagues, I know people that have 30, 40 leagues. If you're like that, you even more so need to get in because it's going to quickly go over your head. You need to get in, evaluate your teams, and write down what things you need for each and every one of your teams. Number 3, make moves for players that you believe will have change in value because of the situation bump. We know that certain teams' receivers will get a positive or negative bump based on if there's a new quarterback there. This year's quarterback class looking pretty strong at this point, especially if you have a Jacksonville Jaguars receiver. You're probably going to be getting Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, some of these guys, Zach Wilson. All these guys are in this class. So you have to think about what teams they could potentially go to, maybe make some trades, maybe make some moves, some pickups on some deep waiver guys based on some of that kind of stuff. Maybe there's teams where you're thinking like the Colts where maybe Matthew Stafford heads there, different things like that. Teams that might be losing a running back due to free agency, looking at some of their backups, guys that are critically or not critically, but always injured. That's something you need to take into consideration as well. So make moves, make trades, make pickups in your leagues based on how you see some of these rosters fluctuating over the course of the offseason. 4, and this is probably the most important in my opinion, specifically for these dynasty leagues, we need to get in there and watch tape of these players. We have to scout these guys. It's such an advantage when you can hit on your rookies in the first round, but also the second and third round when you're hitting on guys that are at least giving you marginal value as opposed to guys that completely tank. Spend time watching film of these players. If you don't know where to go, obviously there's YouTube and all things like that, but once again, I have to plug the Dynasty Nerds website where you can go into the Dynasty film room, watch any player that you want in this upcoming draft on the offensive side of the football. And you can look at every snap from their game and only their game. I can't stress how important that is. If we want to see Travis Etienne last year versus Ohio State, you can go in and see every single snap that he plays in. Snaps that he's not in are not in part of the recording. So you can get through the entire game in 5, 6, 7 minutes and be done, move on to the next game. Something else I want to add in with scouting these players. If you don't know how to do that, there's other good resources. We put out the Film Nerds. That's where myself, Jared Wackerly, Nick Whalen, we break down players, kind of show you some of the things that we're looking for, that we're seeing. There's other great resources on YouTube to be able to give you the opportunity to look at how people scout players that can help give you a bump and an edge. Scout all the players, not just the ones that you think are going to be available where your picks are, because you never know when you're going to have the opportunity to trade up and get somebody. And if you don't know how good they are, it's going to be tough to be able to pull the trigger and move up or move down in the class to be able to get some of those players. So try to scout all the players, not just ones with picks near yours. And I would say do a second round of scouting of all the players. and make sure it's not on the same day. Sometimes this is a little bit of a subjective exercise, scouting. Sometimes based on your attitude, how tired you are, different things can sometimes affect your evaluation. If you do it a second time through, that helps ensure that you probably have a much more sound evaluation process. Last but not least, number 5, crunch the numbers on historical trends that could help you find some diamonds in the rough. We're leaning on our analytics guys. Just because you're an analytics guy or a film grinder doesn't mean you can't utilize the other side. Lean on some of those historical trends. Lean on some of those guys that have the data to tell you these guys tend to produce better than these guys. Those are all helpful things to know, all helpful information to have moving forward. And that wraps up my off-season 2021 5 things you need to be doing. In the meantime, make sure you're plugging into dynastynerds.com, our Dynasty GM tool, our film room, all of our podcasts, our articles. These are all things to help prepare you to dominate your leagues in 2021.